On this week's episode of the I-501CU, the podcast for nonprofit board members, I want to talk about a topic that every board grapples with is, hey, do we need a board retreat? Well, I'm coming off of a successful retreat yesterday, so it's top of mind. Why I call it successful. The feedback was good, and I've done a number of retreats this summer. And I take a step back and go, why, when and why, and how do nonprofit boards need retreats? Hey, everybody, this is Michael Corley. Just wanted to let you know we are now sending out a weekly, very brief newsletter. Tips, tricks, pointers to nonprofit executives. That includes both board members and CEOs, executive directors. If you're interested in receiving this, please go to thecorleycompany.com/newsletter and you can sign up. Once again, that's thecorleycompany.com/newsletter. You know, and it's not something that you have every month. Probably once a year, once every other year is a good time frame in order to do it. But then people say, well, why? Why do we need that? And I'll tell you, it's interesting. And I saw this yesterday, is it really, if you take the time for a retreat, automatically it's different than a board meeting. Board meeting is typically during the week. Everybody's in a hurry to get out and you have a consent agenda and you really don't take the time to dive into deep issues, and you don't not take the time to get to know your fellow board members. So a retreat is a great opportunity to take a step back, catch your breath, and focus on the board over an extended period of time, anywhere between 4 and 6 hours, to address issues that need to be addressed. And maybe one of the number one issues and benefits of a board retreat is just the relationship building that happens, particularly like I had yesterday with a couple new board members. As people roll on, roll off, it really changes the dynamics of the team. And a retreat is an opportunity for everybody to get to know each other a little bit better in a little bit more relaxed setting. Helps build the relationship with the executive director or the CEO, because that person should certainly be involved in the board retreat. Anything done in this world, relationships are absolutely critical, and certainly within the context of a nonprofit board. When you take time away, you get to allocate time for deeper discussion. As I said earlier, a retreat is typically longer. So it's beyond the 2 hours, an hour and a half. It's 4, 6, 7 hours long. And it allows you to really dive in and have some very deep discussion. Also affords you some time for education and training. We board members continually seek opportunities to learn, and we're all at different places along our journey. So being able to say, we are going to dedicate an hour, whatever, to this topic of governance, this topic of nonprofits, this topic about our nonprofit. It's something you're just not afforded the time to do in a standard meeting that happens throughout the year. And it's a great opportunity to set priorities for the year. You got everybody in the room. If one of your topics is strategy, the priorities over the next year, you're engaging in discussion with the CEO, the executive director. It really creates a nice opportunity to say, this is what we're going to focus on over the next year. You all grapple with that. You lay those out, and then it gives the CEO an opportunity to really drive that forward. So really 4 reasons to have a retreat, which I just said: build relationships, allocate enough time, take the time, educate and training, and to set priorities for the year. Well, that's all well and good. But how do you approach a retreat? And this is where it's really important. I'm biased. I think oftentimes you ought to have a facilitator, since that's what I do, but I also don't think you need to have one every time. But if you're going to structure 6, 7 hours, or like yesterday's was even a half-day retreat, you really want it to be a good use of everybody's time. You want people to come into it excited, interested, and walked out having an increased passion for the organization in which they're serving. So first and foremost, strongly recommend you define what's the purpose of the retreat. You need to have a purpose. Why are you pulling everybody together? This is a very expensive meeting in terms of time. What's the purpose? What are your objectives? And I encourage no more than 3 objectives. If we walk out of here and we've accomplished these 3 things, what are those? It could be related to a governance topic, a strategy, could be whatever the topic is. It could be even building the team through a discussion on the mission. There are ways you can do that. And you want to clarify your objectives, because then it starts to give the day focus. Third thing you want to do is really define success. I ask every client this as we're going through a pre-call. When you walk out that day, what will made you have said, wow, that was so worth everybody's time? And it may not be a specific task that was accomplished. It might be there's a greater appreciation for what we do, greater appreciation for each other. It could be we decided on these three strategic objectives. And of course, that would be something very specific, but clearly define success, because from that, if you have the purpose, the objectives, and your definitions for success, now you can build out an agenda, a very detailed run of show to accomplish that and walk down that pathway of success, if you will. That's really critical. When you plan the day, you want to make sure every minute's accounted for and that you have structured an agenda. Typically, it starts with a discussion on the mission. You want to ground people, and then you go through those topics you want to discuss. Oftentimes, it's a governance thing. Maybe you got some governance business. It could be strategy, like I said. It could be real sensitive issue that you haven't had an opportunity to spend significant time on discussing. That actually happens a lot in the retreats that I've done recently. Just this topic, oh boy, we're not so sure how to handle as a board. Well, let's take the appropriate time and we structure a facilitated session to have those types of discussions that are safe and extremely productive and allow the group to make a group decision. And so that agenda, that run of show, critically important. Location, food, breaks, energy level throughout. Do you come back with what types of games? And not every game has to be cheesy. There can be games very productive around the mission and around the goals you want to accomplish. So how do you energize people? And how do you end on a high note? And then what are the action items following the retreat? And as part of that, you want to make sure you prep your board members so when they're coming in, they've had the materials that they need to review. I encourage not a whole heck of a lot, because chances are they're not going to read it till right beforehand anyway, but enough information to give them context so that they can be productive throughout the retreat and contribute as you want them to contribute. Retreats can have different focuses, different purposes, and I've seen any number of reasons to have a retreat, and it really varies by the nonprofit organization. It could be just as simple as, it's strategic planning. We need to discuss the 3 strategic objectives we want our executive director to focus on next year with specific action items. Very good reason to have a retreat. It could be we need to review and train everybody on governance because we've had turnover. We're adjusting our bylaws. Whatever the case may be, we need to have a discussion on this very sensitive topic. Are we going to take a position? Are we going to do something about it? Are we going to cut programs? Are we going to increase programs? Whatever the case may be, it just gives the group of 15 or however many it is an opportunity to step back and really focus on the topic at hand. So I'm a firm believer that retreats are invaluable. I've been on the board member side of retreats, and I've been on the facilitator side of retreats. I think they're invaluable if properly structured and constructed and gone in with the right frame of mind and reference of this is what we want to have out of the retreat. And at the end of this day, this is what we hope to accomplish. So to all your board members out there, I hope you'll consider having a retreat. To executive directors, CEOs, likewise, hope you think about it. And if it makes sense to do so, go ahead and move forward with it. Just make sure you structure a very productive day. And it is a joyous, uplifting event and not something that people walk out of feeling downtrodden. So this is Michael Corley, the I-501C, the podcast for nonprofit board members. And I will see you next week.